Hello there and a warm welcome to Africa Tonight, a window to your continent. Thank you so much for joining us, to all our viewers in South Africa and across the continent. My name is Audrey Chimwanda. Now, as Zimbabwe heads to the general elections in 2018, both the political and the social setup taking a turn in the country. Now, to discuss a host of issues, we're joined by the Zimbabwean ambassador to South Africa, His Excellency Mr. Isaac Moy is here in studio. His Excellency, thank you so much for joining us and a warm welcome to the show.
Thank you.
A number of issues affecting Zimbabweans, especially here in the diaspora. A huge number of people have crossed the border, and I'm sure they're happy that you're here today to perhaps explain some of the issues that they may need clarity on. First of all, the statutory instrument 64, which I believe has been widely not understood by a lot of Zimbabweans, because the impression that is there is that the Zimbabwean government is banning all imports from South Africa to Zimbabwe, and it is hitting the very core of not only the small but the big players as well, because a lot of people are depending on the informal sector to eke out a living. Would you care to explain this statutory instrument 64 to us?
Yes, thank you very much. Statutory instrument was introduced by government in June this year. It was introduced to regulate trade, particularly certain items that government felt our industry was now developing some capacity to produce. There are only about 42 items involved, and some of them very small. And these items are not necessarily the items that individuals import for their own consumption. These are the items that are imported into the country for trade purposes, for commercial purposes, and of course, as government, we felt we had a responsibility to our industry in almost all the items involved under this statutory instrument. We do have Zimbabwean companies that are producing similar items. In fact, ever since that instrument was introduced, production by those companies of the particular items is shot up quite significantly. It has risen from nearly 34% to almost 50–65%. And most of the companies, the business associations like the Confederation of Zimbabwe Industries, have welcomed this statutory instrument. So it is really working. People who want to import personal items are still able to import those items.
Right, there's this perception that is out there that the Zimbabwe border officials are enforcing 100% ban. I don't know if you've ever heard any of those reports. That's, you know, some of the narratives that we're getting from Zimbabweans who are crossing the border. Are you aware of this? I
heard about them, and they are not true. The border officials are not enforcing anything else apart from what statutory instrument 64 provides for. So individuals are still able to even import those prohibited items, provided it is for their own consumption. In fact, our Ministry of Industry and Commerce is in dialogue with these cross-border traders, and currently what they are trying to encourage them is for these traders to focus on importing items that are used as raw materials by industry. The same industries that produce these items import raw materials largely from South Africa, and most of the cross-border traders now appreciate that raw materials are probably better business than cases of petroleum jelly and coffee creamers, water that were covered by statutory instrument 64.
And that brings me to my next question, which ties into it. I understand the statutory instrument 64 is there to protect the industry, the manufacturing industry in Zimbabwe. Has it been improving? I understand it's been only at 30% since 1999. Is this part of the efforts that you're trying to implement to make sure that the industry grows, the manufacturing industry?
I already alluded to quite some considerable improvement that has been recorded ever since the statutory instrument was introduced in June. I made references to the views of the affected business people, the Confederation of Zimbabwe Industries, the Zimbabwe National Chamber of Commerce, ZNNC. These associations, business associations, have already spoken quite favorably about the impact of this statutory instrument. I did allude to the fact that the current capacity utilization of industry has grown, and in certain cases to 65%, in a few industries up to 90%. So the statutory instrument has really been producing the desired effect. We are able to revive our industry, we are able to grow employment. This is what we sought to achieve by the introduction of this statutory instrument.
Let's talk about the so-called, or the bond notes. Most Zimbabweans are terrified of it. The prospect of the return of the Zimbabwean currency as well being tied into that. What is your take on that? Is this something that should help with the supposedly money flow in Zimbabwe? How does this help the economy?
The Zimbabwe currently suffers from a liquidity crunch. We are short of cash, and this affects our economy badly. The bond notes are a measure that has been introduced by government after a lot of consultations, by the way, with all stakeholders. They are going to be introduced maybe sometime later this month or early next month, and they are backed by a $200 million facility that government secured from Afrexim Bank, and initially they would be introduced in small denominations, $2, the equivalent of $5. They are really to try and address the hardships that our people have been going through. Yes, there are people who are scared about bond notes. Yes, there are lots of political groups, particularly, as well as civil society organizations, that see an opportunity to play politics with the issue of bond notes. And the government has never said that it is reintroducing the Zimbabwe dollar through bond notes. I think government has been very clear that bond notes are just what they are, a temporary measure to address the problems the country is experiencing right now. And government has also been very clear that the Zimbabwe dollar will only be introduced when the economy has been sufficiently revived to merit the reintroduction of the currency. So there is no question of bond notes being turned into Zimbabwe dollars. They are what government have said they are.
Well, you speak of elements trying to politicize the issue of bond notes. Could you further elaborate on that, and perhaps allay fears of Zimbabweans who really are terrified of these bond notes?
Well, in politics, political parties tend to grab anything that can be a useful tool in terms of their political agendas, and I think bond notes are just one such item. They are seen as attractive. You can scare people using bond notes because people have an experience with the hyperinflation period and what then happened to the Zimbabwe dollar. So it is easy to use bond notes as a mobilization tool, and we have seen opposition parties really running with bond notes. But I think the merits of the bond notes have been sufficiently explained by government. The Zimbabweans who fail to get cash and spend so much time in the queue every day waiting for cash can't wait to get those bond notes. So it is those ordinary people that government is very concerned to serve, and the bond notes will assist some of the problems they have been getting regarding the supply of cash in the country.
Right. There has been a few suggestions from the business sector in Zimbabwe with regards to some of the suggestions they've come up with. There's what is called the Rand Monetary Union, like the one Swaziland, Lesotho, and Namibia is a part of. That is, their own currency is pegged just to 1:1 with the Zimbabwean Rand. Is that a possibility for Zimbabwe, perhaps?
Well, Zimbabwe currently is not a member of the Rand monetary area. Zimbabwe is perfectly entitled to really consider its position carefully and thoroughly before deciding to either apply for membership or to stay out. I think it is not just a question of us as Zimbabwe deciding that we want to be a member of the Rand monetary area. One would ask whether the members of that monetary area have been asked whether they are looking for new members. For now, that is not what Zimbabwe is about to become. We are still committed to the multi-currency regime, and we will use the Rand, the US dollar, in our basket of currencies as determined by government. If government eventually decides that they would need to consider that option, it will be determined by circumstances obtaining at a particular time. But for now, we are not submitting an application.
Right. How are you encouraging Zimbabweans living in the diaspora who are making a bit of money here and there to invest back home in Zimbabwe? What opportunities are there?
In a number of ways. Sometime last week, we had a conference of the diaspora here, a day's meeting where we brought our diaspora together in South Africa, and we had a team of officials from home, including myself, that addressed that meeting. We did that because government recently adopted a diaspora policy. It tries not only to create economic space for Zimbabweans in the diaspora to exploit, but it also really provides processes by which these people can participate in the economic activities of the country. And the team that I referred to visited Zimbabweans in the UK, in Canada, and then they came to South Africa. We are speaking to Zimbabweans. We are encouraging them to engage the economic spaces back home, and we are also met with a lot of interest and excitement from Zimbabweans. Some of them are already involved, others promise to be, and of course, government encourages that. This is what that conversation was all about. Just this evening, I was at an earlier function where I addressed Zimbabweans in Johannesburg, and we again talked about their participation back home. I see a lot of interest all around.
Ambassador, what do you say to Zimbabweans who want to invest back home, but they say, look, you're not giving us a voting franchise here in the diaspora? How does this benefit us? What does this benefit us at the end of the day?
Well, yes, the current position is that we do not yet have the diaspora vote, but I don't know if you are aware that we are in the process of harmonizing several of our laws with our new constitution. Our new constitution provides for the diaspora vote, but our current laws do not provide for the diaspora vote. What government is currently doing is to harmonize over 400 pieces of legislation with the constitution. I think it is conceivable that the end of that process may create opportunities where this would become possible. But for now, the diaspora vote is not there because it is not provided for by any piece of our legislation.
Right, and
but this is work in progress.
Okay, and all these efforts you're speaking of, do you think it will happen perhaps by the 2018 general elections, or is that speaking too soon?
I am not able to say that Parliament would have harmonized over 400 laws by 2018. It depends with the speed with which that is going to happen, but this is work in progress. As I said, I think government must be allowed to continue with that harmonization, and we'll see what happens when all the laws have finally been harmonized. It is a good thing that at least our constitution does provide for this, the diaspora vote, but so we have something to look forward to. But it may not be happening too soon. Depends with when Parliament is going to be done with its exercise.
Right. What can be done to make it easier for people to send money home? Because the formal channels that are there at the moment are really so expensive. And, you know, there's a lot of Zimbabwe who are sending money home. And I understand per annum it's coming up to $1 billion. You would know better.
Yes.
But it really is becoming very expensive. What can be done to alleviate this problem?
Well, as part of government's diaspora policy framework that was adopted recently, government decided to actually incentivize by giving 5% to any Zimbabwean who decides to send money back home through the formal channels. Yes, the Reserve Bank of Zimbabwe has said that almost $1 billion is being transacted through informal channels. And what government is trying to do is to get this money into the formal channels. Now, what that means is that the government will, if you send money to your friend, to your relation in Zimbabwe, there will be an additional percentage that those persons will get. In fact, that person who receives the money will get something like 3%. In other words, maybe if I don't know what 3% of $100 would be, maybe $3, it means that over and above the money you have sent, and after the agent has taken his own part, which is also incentivized by government to the tune of 2%, your beneficiary will be able to get their money plus this additional amount of money. So it's an incentive government is extending to the diaspora to use informal channels. And of course, informal channels are secure, your money is safe, the agents who handle it are subject to law. So it also ensures that your money will never get lost. And when your mother, when your father, your friend get that money, they are getting a little bonus on top. Government is able to do that because we think that we can still unleash the full potential of the diaspora as far as remitting these funds to Zimbabwe are concerned. Instead of 1 billion, we can grow to a couple of billions, and this incentive is calculated to assist that process.
Right. Going back to investors, people who want to invest back home, and I think one of the incentives or one of the things that instill confidence in them is to understand that there's stability in Zimbabwe, and socially, economically, and politically. With the protests that have been happening back home, we've seen that civil servants have not been getting paid, civil unrest, and you know, all these protests that we have been seeing in the media. What is your comment when it comes to that? Is it something that is going to be exacerbated by the economic situation, or this is the situation calming down now?
Well, sure. The economic situation in our country has been difficult, and the history is behind that is very well known. This is exactly what those who imposed sanctions on my country wanted to see. A tough economic situation that will make the members of the public rise against government. We are seeing what they intended to do with this policy of sanctioning the country. But that said, let me say that the Zimbabwe government is in control of the situation. The government is strong. The police are able to control the streets. Yes, we do have those demonstrations. We have had them from time to time, but really they are not going to be the avenue through which the Zimbabwe government is going to be changed. Only an election is what determines how a government is formed in Zimbabwe. So we think that we will still be able to essentially maintain the peace and the stability of the country. Small problems which arise here and there will be dealt with. For that, I'm almost certain.
And you're calling it a small problem. That is how you describe this protest.
Well, the protests will be contained. They are an issue, but they will be contained. And of course, you know, I've had protesters come to the embassy here, 15 of them, 20, and they come and tell me that the president must resign. And I ask them, who arrogates the 15 of you the authority to say that a president who has been elected by millions of Zimbabweans must resign? If you are not happy, go back home and campaign, and they are free to go and do their electioneering. 2018 is coming. We encourage them to go and register, vote. That is where they can bring about change, not this promoting change through the streets, the illegal and unconstitutional means of changing the regime. We will not accept.
Right. And speaking of the protesters that have been to your offices in the embassy in Pretoria, have you been able to engage them? I understand they had, I don't know if it was a list of demands or a memorandum or a petition that they needed to hand over to you. Will you be wanting to engage with them in the future? Or is that something that you will not be willing to do at all?
We have always, they have come to the embassy. They've gone to our consulates in Johannesburg, in Cape Town. We really have engaged them. Every time they come, they give us petitions. I just referred to one that demanded that the president must resign by the 31st of August, and I was given by less than 20 protesters. I said, I engaged them, and I tried to make them see that did not seem a very clever thing to do, that 20 people can demand that a constitutionally elected president should leave because 15 people now have a problem with him. So yes, we will continue engaging them. We continue to try and educate them as well. In those conversations we have with them, we also sell certain perspectives to them. This is something we have continued to do. Of course, we can only do it provided they are protesting peacefully. If they were to bring violence to our gate, then we will have no reason to engage them whatsoever, because we don't entertain violence whatsoever.
Right, so some of the demands on the petitions that you have been receiving at your offices, you'll correct me if I'm wrong, is that people protesting against what they call massive corruption and employment bond notes. We've covered some of that. Police brutality, a computer cyber bill that is feared that it will strip Zimbabweans of their personal freedom.
Yes, well, this police brutality is something that is come from the protesters. But the protesters are exercising, so they say, their right to protest, and it is granted by the country's constitution. I think it must be section 59 of the Constitution of Zimbabwe, and they put a lot of emphasis on that. But of course, the same constitution also grants the police the responsibility to maintain law and order, to maintain peace and stability in the country. And what the police do is to deal with situations of violence when they arise. They think they are applying the minimum force necessary. We have not seen anybody killed yet in these protests that have taken place. The police, yes, may have applied some minimum force, but it is only because they want to do their job as provided for by the constitution of the country, and they do not feel that they have applied excessive force. Maybe if that had been done, we would have had a couple of deaths by now in the country. We don't have even a single one.
So police brutality should equate death for it to be police brutality. The videos we've been seeing of police beating people up with baton sticks, does that not equate to police brutality?
If the protesters are destroying property, they are threatening other peace-loving people, they are closing roads and burning tires, and ensuring that the country comes to a standstill because they are protesting, I guess it is the police job to ensure that they are removed from those spaces so that the others who want to go about their own activities are allowed to do so. I would not think that it is brutal to stop somebody torching a shop and looting shops and beating other people who are going about their own day-to-day activities. If you do that, you will be stopped, and a minimum force is provided for in our constitution.
So I was running a little small survey to Zimbabweans here in South Africa to say, do you know who your ambassador is? And I got different responses. Some of them know who you are, know where the consulate officers are if they need any help. To those Zimbabweans who may not be aware of who their ambassador is, what would you like to say to them as we wrap up this interview, and what kind of help they can get from the offices of the consulate here in South Africa?
Yes, my name is Isaac Moyo. I am the ambassador of Zimbabwe here. I'm assisted by Mr. Mukono Eshuro, our Consul General in Johannesburg, and I also have Mr. Mugobo, who is our Consul General in Cape Town. The embassy is available to all Zimbabweans to come with their issues, and so many Zimbabweans are coming. The consulates are available to Zimbabweans. They mainly deal with identity issues, paperwork, birth certificates, passports, those kinds of things, repatriation certificates for if you are unfortunate to lose your beloved one. We are there to serve Zimbabweans, and everybody should feel very free to engage us. We maintain an open door policy to Zimbabweans. That's why so many Zimbabweans feel very free to engage us, and they do so every day. I just told you that I'm coming from an event where I was in dialogue with a group of Zimbabweans, and this we do every day.
Yes, Ambassador, just very quickly before I let you go, the issue of Zimbabwe special permits, what dialogues are you having with the South African Home Affairs Department? Should we expect them to be renewed, or are you still in talks?
We are still discussing those issues with the South African government. I think it would be premature of me to preempt the outcome of those discussions. But so many Zimbabweans have approached the embassy. They have certain concerns, and the Zimbabwe government has taken up the issue with the South African government.
Right, His Excellency, Mr. Isaac Moyo, thank you so much for your time here on Africa Tonight. We certainly appreciate it, and hopefully we will be having you visit us again sometime soon.
Thank you very much.
That's all the time we had for Africa Tonight. I was speaking to His Excellency, Mr. Isaac Moyo, who is the Zimbabwean ambassador to South Africa. He's hoping you enjoyed the show. That's it for our Friday edition of Africa Tonight. Go ahead and have a lovely weekend, and we get to meet again on Monday, same time, same place. Good night.